Hello? Is anyone there? It's starting to get dark. How do I always get into these situations?
Yes, and as the book says, one must traverse the darkness to find the light.
Oh! Yeah, well, speaking of the light, I'm trying to find the comma. Can you help me out, dude?
I'm not just a dude, I'm a wacky wizard.
Yeah. I already know who you are. I met your sisters.
Oh, and as the book always says, family usually delivers you gifts.
So, what do I need to tell you in order to get the comma?
You must tell as the old book does, for it says, one shall come and precisely purvey the power of punctuation.
Sweet alliteration, but can you clarify what you mean?
Tell me about commas in the direct quotes. Also, try to keep it quick. I have a bingo tournament in an hour, and I'm feeling lucky.
Fine. Cool with me. Whiz.
Don't call me that.
Whoa! Grammar goodies. Thank you so much for dropping into General Grammar with me, Mr. Goody Grammar. And today we're going to go ahead and conclude talking about such an essential punctuation mark, the comma. But what specifically about the comma will we discuss today? Well, we're discussing how we use a comma when it comes to direct quotes. But hold up! Before we get into that, let's go ahead and do a basket breaker.
Uh-oh.
For this week's basket breaker, the question is, what is the funniest joke you've heard? Take a second. Think about it. What'd you get, grammar goodies? Here's my answer. My answer is a dad joke. It's, I'm afraid for the calendar because its days are numbered. Why aren't you laughing? Anyway, all these dad jokes have me quite parched. So I think we should drink up some radioactive waste.
3, 2, 1.
But before we begin, make sure to hit the subscribe button and download the free guided notes in the description box below. The guided notes and episodes have matching badges to indicate each section, so you can follow along with ease. Also, during each episode, underline any text that appears in red or a bold font to identify key words and concepts. It's the shopping list that your mom always forgot to take to the grocery store. Whoa! But what are quotation marks? Well, quotation marks are punctuation marks used in pairs. And we use them in various writing systems to set off direct speech, a quotation, or even a phrase. Additionally, we use quotation marks with direct quotes, with titles of certain works, and even to imply alternate meanings. Because we're talking about grammar, and I'm randomly putting quotation marks around words, let's go ahead and look at an example. We have this direct quote. My brain is like melted ice cream. My brain is not working. It's melting from all the grammar knowledge. As you can see in this example, we have a direct quote. It's something that someone said. So we put quotation marks around the entire sentence because that's what the individual said. Hence, quotation marks. Alrighty, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of rules when it comes to using quotation marks. The first rule of using a quotation mark is once you open quotation marks, you need to close them. They're used in a pair. You want to make sure that you encapsulate everything that a person is saying or said in the quotation marks. You don't want to misquote them or give misinformation about what they said. So that's why we make sure to put all the information within the quotation marks. Additionally, in many cases, we use a comma to set off a quotation from the rest of the sentence. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. Example, Minnie Kitty stated, "My whiskers are mind-controlling antennas." Whoa!
Meow, 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 meow. Meow.
In this example, you could see that the quote, "My whiskers are mind-controlling antennas," is separated from the beginning of the sentence with a comma. Minnie Kitty stated, comma, to lead into the quote, and then the quotation marks around what she said. But hold up, grammar goodies. Depending on where the direct quote is in the sentence will also help determine where you'll put the comma. Let's look at a couple of ways in which we can go ahead and incorporate a direct quote into a sentence. The first structure that I want to talk about is leading into a quote. When the introductory words appear before the quote, we need to use a comma to separate those introductory words from the quotation. Let me show you an example. Example, he looked at me and said, "I'm breaking up with you." Listen, this needs to end. So, yeah, I'm breaking up with you. Really? Me? You're breaking up with me? I dated you out of pity. Ugh, whatever, loser. As you can see in this example, it starts with the introduction, "He looked at me and said." After "said," we put a comma because we're about to go into exactly what he said, or the direct quote in this case, which he said, "I'm breaking up with you," which is all encapsulated within the quotation marks, making it a direct quote. So as you can see, if we lead into the quote with introductory information, we need to offset it with a comma to then go into our direct quote. Example, at the movie's end, he yelled, "That was awful!" What? Are you serious? That was the movie? That was awful! Oh! Do I get a refund? As you can see in this example, we have the introductory information, "he yelled," which is offset by a comma right before the direct quote. Here, you can see that we're leading into the direct quote, so we need that comma to offset it from exactly what's in the quotation marks. Alrighty, let's move on to the second way that we can incorporate a direct quote into a sentence. In this scenario, we're actually going to end the sentence with a direct quote. More specifically, if you end a sentence with a direct quote, you are actually going to put the end punctuation mark within the quotation marks. Example, Minnie Kitty stated, "My whiskers are mind-controlling antennas."
Meow. Meow.
In this example, we could see that it ends with the direct quote, "My whiskers are mind-controlling antennas." Since we're ending with a quote, our period is going to go within the quotation marks. Also, you'll see that the introduction is actually offset with that comma right before we get into the direct quote. Example, Commander Colin said, "Throw the sword into the lake." As you can see here, the sentence ends with a direct quote. Therefore, we need to put that end punctuation mark, the period, within the quotation marks to end the sentence. Additionally, it starts with the introduction, "Commander Colin said," followed by a comma to offset it from the direct quote. The third structure that we're going to talk about is starting a sentence with a direct quote. Let me go ahead and break it down. If the direct quotation begins the sentence, the comma is placed inside the quotation marks after the last word of the direct quote. Let me go ahead and show you. Example, my whiskers are mind-controlling antennas, Minnie Kitty said. In this example, we started with the direct quote, my whiskers are mind-controlling antennas. Since it ends there, we're going to put a comma and then the end quotation marks to transition into who said it, which is Minnie Kitty said. So, if you start a sentence with a direct quote, make sure to offset it from the rest of the sentence with a comma inside the quotation marks. Example, throw the sword into the lake, Commander Colin said. Once again, as you can see in this example, it starts with a direct quote, throw the sword into the lake. Then it transitions into who said that, which is Commander Colin. To offset this direct quote from who said it, there's a comma put at the very end of the quote, followed by the quotation mark to keep everything within it. Then, of course, we end with a period after who said it to make a complete sentence. Next, let's talk all about quotes and interruptions. What do you mean, Mr. Goody Grammar? Well, let me go ahead and explain for you. If the direct quotation is interrupted by an explanation of who said it, a comma is placed inside the quotation marks at the end of the first part of the quotation. So it's going, here's the first part of the quote, and let's offset it with a comma within the quotation marks. Then you'll put your own words of who said it, followed by a second comma to offset that from the rest of the quotation. Pretty simple, right? It's very much like adding extra information into an independent clause. We use parenthetical commas. The same thing applies here. However, the placement is a little different based off where your quotation marks are. Keep in mind that the first comma to interrupt goes within the quotation marks of the very first part of the quote, whereas the second parenthetical comma goes after the explanatory information and right before the second part of the quote. Example, my whiskers, Minnie Kitty said, are mind-controlling antennas. In this example, you could see that we took our quote and cut it in half. We used two commas to separate the quote into two separate parts, and then we inserted our explanatory information into the middle of it. So we have, my whiskers, Minnie Kitty said, are mind-controlling antennas. You'll see that the first comma goes within the quotation marks right after the last word of the quote. Then you'll see that the second comma appears before said, then leading into the second part of the quote. That's how you use commas to interrupt quotes to add explanatory information. It's very similar to using parenthetical commas. Example, throw the sword, Commander Colin said, into the lake. In this example, you could see that we took the full quote, throw the sword into the lake, and separated it into two different parts. We interrupted the quote to add in the explanatory information that Commander Colin said this. And we used two commas to separate that information and add in the explanatory information. Pretty cool, right? Whoa! That was a lot of information, grammar goodies. So I think it's time that we ask for some employee assistance. Oh, so much grammar. My head's gonna explode. I don't know what to do. I need help. We need some employee assistance. In this section, here's what's gonna happen. I'm going to read various sentences. You need to determine whether or not the punctuation in each sentence is correct. If it's not correct, fix it. Think you can do that? Read each sentence and determine whether or not the punctuation is correct? I know you can. So let's do it. Example. My life, expounded Blake, is a complex expression of abstract art. And yes, I do believe that the metaphorical and figurative reason why we exist is very much similar to why ants exist. It's complex. It's this sociological experiment. My mind. It amazes me. Ugh. Is the punctuation correct? Oh? What'd you get, grammar goodies? Here's the answer. Absolutely! This is totally correct. You'll see that this example takes a quotation and interrupts it in the middle of it to add explanatory information. In this case, the information is Blake expounded. That says who said the quote. And we use 2 commas to interrupt the quote to add in that extra information. So this is punctuated correctly. Example, don't live your life, my mother said, without following your dreams. Sweetie, you're incredible. Follow your dreams. You can do anything at all. Just work hard and it'll happen for you. Thanks, Mom. Is this sentence punctuated correctly? Huh? Alrighty, here's the answer. No, it's not punctuated correctly. You could see that this has a direct quote that is interrupted with explanatory information, my mother said. And you'll see that it doesn't have commas to interrupt them, to offset that explanatory information from the direct quote. So we need to put a comma after the first part of the quote within the quotation marks. Then we're going to go ahead and put a comma after said right before the second part of the quote begins. That's how we take a direct quote and insert extra information in between it. Example, you can't even function without your stuffed llama, said Mac Attack. What am I gonna do? I don't know where my stuffed llama is. I can't function. What is breathing? I can't even breathe. I don't know how to do. Buy my stuffed llama. Is this sentence punctuated correctly? Take a second. Think about it. Answer. No, this is not punctuated correctly. Well, since this example starts with a direct quote, we need to make sure to add a comma at the end of the direct quote to offset it from the rest of the information in the sentence. Therefore, we should put a comma after llama, followed by a quotation mark, and then the explanatory information that follows. That's how we do it. That's how we start a sentence with a direct quote and offset it from the rest of the information with a comma. Example, Kit looked at me and said, "You should learn the science behind the mint plant." Well, according to my research, mint plants are the phoenixes of plants. Their dead bodies help create a new body in a perpetual cycle of life and death. Right? Is this sentence punctuated correctly? Take a second. Answer. Absolutely. You can see it starts with some introductory information of who said the quote, which is Kit. And we offset that introductory information, that explanatory information, with a comma right before the direct quote that ends the sentence. You'll also notice, since the sentence ends with a direct quote, we put the period at the end of the sentence within the quotation marks. Whoa! That was a lot of information, grammar goodies. Do you have it down? I know you do. So let's go ahead and put that to the test with an I'll check. Pop, pop. We're ready for an I'll check. Whoa! For this week's I'll check, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna go ahead and take a quote. It could be a quote that already exists or an original quote that you create. What will you do with this quote? Well, you're going to write a few sentences using this quote. The first thing you should do is start the sentence with that quote, and then add the explanatory information of who said it. For the second sentence, interrupt the quote with the explanatory information. And then finally, you should go ahead and write a sentence that ends with a direct quote and begins with explanatory information. By doing these various structures, you'll be able to basically master where to put commas when it comes to quotation marks. So think you could do that? Write 3 examples of commas and quotation marks? I know you can! And get to it! Whoa! How'd it go, grammar goodies? I bet you made some incredible sentences. In fact, if you absolutely love your sentences, make sure to post them into the comments section. I can't wait to read them. Well, without further ado, I think it's time we start to check out for the evening. Whoa! Look at the time, grammar goodies. I have to jet. Anyway, my name is Mr. Goody Grammar. Thank you so much for dropping by General Grammar. And comma in anytime. I'll see ya. Whoa!
Yes, it is as the book states. He with the blue apron will save the kingdom.
Huh? Does it really say that? Let me see.
No! Only the magicians of the woods can read from the book, but you may have this.
Yeah! Finally! I have the comma. But where do I go next?
It as the book states. There is a small squire on the castle grounds. Find him and learn the secrets of the semicolon.
A semicolon squire? Sounds swell.
Well, it is as the book states. Those who use alliteration.
I gotta go.
As the book states, there's a toucan salsa dancing with a javelina.